I'm here at Aquhorthies Recumbent Stone Circle, and it's another lovely sunny mid-afternoon June. So we're at Aquhorthies, which is relatively accessible. I was getting a little bit of feedback about what I mean by accessible. So it's easy to park just off the B road. There's a nice little car parking space there. There's an open field, another open field, and what I mean by open field is no gates, to just walk straight through. And as you approach the circle, where the field where the circle is located, there is one field gate to climb over. But it's a ladder gate, relatively straightforward to climb over, but I understand there's different levels of accessibility for different people. But it is a lovely site to visit. This has probably been the 5th time I've been. It's usually a crop field which is going to get planted, I think, just shortly. And there's, I can't remember, I think it's kind of, there's another monument circle there, stone circle. I think it's Bush Hill or something like that. It's just across the way, worth a visit as well while you're here. This is an unusual circle in that it has a forecourt. This section here is built up in front of the circle. It has a definite build up a wall, a forecourt that kind of comes round. There's stone spoil just beyond there, and it comes up to the recumbent just around about here. In fact, as the numbering of the stones in great crowns of stone is depicted, this stone here and this stone here are called A and B. They're not included in the circle stone count for whatever reason. So it's actually quite a large monument with this forecourt, the circle, the recumbent setting, the curb stones. The cairn's been heavily robbed for stone dikes, no doubt, but there's a central court as well. So it's a fairly complete circle. Definitely worth a visit. And let's have a little walk through. So yeah, like I say, there's this kind of strange forecourt that's well built up from the level of the field, probably about a good sort of 3 metres from the level of the field up to this forecourt, with a couple of stones represented there. There's the recumbent itself, setting, which has got number 1 stone still standing in the west flanker. The east flanker, number 3 stones missing completely. And then there's an odd numbering arrangement of the circle stones which we'll go through, which I think is described as pretty much kind of major and minor stones. But there's essentially 13 standing stones, which is quite a significant amount. And then there's the curb stones, which we'll look round, and then the central court, which we'll have a wee look at as well. So let's just start off with number 1 stone then. So we're talking about, as we come up, there's lovely quartz here. Look at that, shining in the sun. It's head height with me, so it'll be 1.5 metres high. It's a slab of a stone, a kind of flat fronted face there with a quartz, and backside's fairly, well, not flat, but it's fairly well dressed or chosen to be this slab-like stone with a relatively kind of handspan type width. A slab of a stone, no doubt, and quite heavily quartzed. It's hard to tell sometimes when it's actually just stone and half quartz, but this looks like it's got quite a lot of quartz seams running through it. The recumbent then, stone 2, is around about 2.75 metres long, flat fronted, and so walk around the back of it as well. We'll walk down the side to get a kind of profile shot. There's a kind of triangular shape, certainly, with a kind of pointed top ridge, maybe a good metre at the bottom, wide and tapering up to the top, and again relatively flattened along the back. Again, there's 1 or 2 sections that look like they've had maybe a little bit of damage. So a nice a nice sizable recumbent. Stone number 3 is completely missing. There's no real kind of evidence of one lying around. They've not suggested that this is the stone 3, the east flanker, because there's a kind of partner stone over here that was probably more to do with this court, this forecourt that's out the front. So we come round the circle to stone 4, and you can see that this, due to either ploughing or there's maybe been a track along this section of the field, this section is a lot lower than the actual base layer of the circle. There's quite a height difference, and because of that height difference, there's a potential of such stones as number 4 getting a little bit potential to kind of fall over, I guess, if the ground here becomes eroded, because that's essentially the stone's socket. So from the outer face we've got a nice flat face, a couple of kind of deep cracks there, and this is kind of like a red granite as far as I can tell, pointed in shape, but again it could easily have been squared and had a bit of damage to it, because it's a severe point. It's like a ridge at the top of this one. From the side it kind of tapers up the way. It's kind of directly opposite of a kind of a cone shape, you'd think, eh? Kind of going out there, you'd think it'd be the other way around. And a bit of a kind of ridge as it comes into the circle. But a chunk of a stone, no doubt, and probably had a little bit of damage with that top section. Coming round now, this is called stone 4A. So I'm guessing it's because there's a kind of like a major and a minor. They decided just to call it 4A. It's a relatively small stone. This one's just up to kind of waist height a little bit. Looks like it's been through the wars. Some sections taken out of it. This is more of a kind of grey. Hard to kind of sometimes tell through the moss and the lichen, but it looks pretty grey granite to me. Down at the lower level, a couple of cracks all the way through it. Maybe a couple of chunks out of it as well. Sometimes difficult to tell with a circle that's maybe been close to a kind of really really hard working farmland, which this would have been. It's potentially had quite a bit of damage. Some stones here that was shoring up the circle base from spoiling back into the fields level. And you never know that these stones that have been used to kind of shore up the perimeter were potentially curb stones or circle stones, or out in the forecourt there that may have been used just to kind of shore this up. So 4A, we're missing 5, which I guess might have been in this socket here, because this is called 5A. I guess it's kind of minor stone, relatively small. From inside the circle it's just waist height. From outside the circle it's up to almost to head height. There's a really nice bit of quartz there, lovely. Grey granite, flat faced, wide at the base, tapered at the top, and flat faced on the inside. Then coming round to stone 6 as it's depicted in Great Crowns of Stone, a little bit more of a, what would you expect to see, a kind of flatter outer face to the circle. Possibly a little bit of damage here, looks like there's been a chunk taken out of it. Possibly this is the chunk. Pointy, flattish face on the inside, and more of a slab shape to that, although you can see there's been something's been damaged this stone. This is 6A, a rather small squat stone, again described as a minor stone. Hard to tell. There's quite a bit written in Great Crowns of Stone which I think kind of depicts why these are called A stones, and the minor significance of them. Whether it was a reconstruction or what, I'm not entirely sure, but there's a little bit of a description about why there is A stones. Number 7, a relatively small stone. So we're getting to the back of the circle, so if I come out the circle and look across to the recumbent, which is there, this is near the back of it. We'll still maybe get to the back here, but 7 is a block of a stone. It's almost square base. A chunk taken off the top here. Grey granite again. I think this is 7A, a relatively small minor stone right at the back of the circle. Maybe just plonked here to depict the back of the circle, don't know, but I did have a little bit of concern that the farmer is fairly close to the boundary of the circle now with his ploughing. This is, I think, is depicted as kind of spoil from the maybe the field is coming. That looks a fairly new spoiled stone to be knocked in. It doesn't look like there's been any of the circle stones that's been popped out of their sockets, but you never know. It might have been a stone that's popped out the field during ploughing and been flung into the circle. Along here, amongst all the spoil, this stone here has been designated as 8A, apart from all this lying around. I think this may have been depicted as having a socket, maybe that's the reason. And then we're round to number 9, getting back to kind of what would be a kind of normal sized circle stone, flat faced on the outer side, pointed, and it's relatively got a flat side along here. It's got a bit of higgledy-piggledy down this side, but the inner surface is relatively flat. Again, you might say this has been shaped pointed or found pointed, but it would look like there's a wee bit of damage being done to the top of it. But it's a chunk of a stone. This is a kind of stone that you wouldn't have maybe moved easily enough. These smaller stones that have been depicted as A, as you know, a couple of people could pick them up, but something like that's definitely a normal kind of expectation of a circle stone. Coming round, the ground's a little bit uneven. Here's another stone that's looks like it's been houked out of the ground recently and plonked. I think it's probably from there. I think this farmer is getting a little bit too close to this monument. And down to number 10, which is a monster of a stone, which is interesting because, again, the normal expectation would be flankers would be the tallest stones, then working our way around the circle to the smallest stones on the back. So perhaps what's happened is that the actual flankers, and the missing flanker especially, was a lot larger than we see today. Because 10 is a nice lovely red granite, and from the outside of the circle it's like a good 2 meters high. Inside the circle it's up to kind of my eye height, so it's about 1.5 on the inside. But lovely flat faces. A wee bit maybe kind of broken side there and there, but a block of a stone rather than a slab. It's a little bit more square than it is thin, for sure. And then number 11 is massive. It's getting to a monster, as I would describe its size. So from outside the circle, you can see evidence there as the socket or the bottom of the stone is becoming exposed. Its socket's becoming exposed. This is becoming a little bit too worrying for erosion, and it's a bit worrying because that's a big stone to fall. A flattish face on the outside. A significant height difference on this one. Oh my, look at that. Lovely quartz shining in the sun. Nice quartz seam there. A bit higgledy-piggledy on the inside. Rough and ready on the top. And a nice kind of flattish side on the recumbent side of the stone. But it's a wee bit worrying that this is becoming quite exposed at the base and the outside of the circle. Which means it's only going to go one way. At some point it'll become so eroded that it'll fall, and unfortunately this is, as many of the circles are, this is a protected site. It's not a managed site, so it's protected in that it's not supposed to receive any kind of modifications or damage without, you know, intended or unintended damage. But it's not got its own car park, it's not got its own pathway, it's not fenced off in any way. It's not looked after. So if it was looked after, I'm sure that would have been repaired and made sure it was safe. So that's us back to the recumbent, and what we'll do is we'll have a little bit of look at the cairn, the curbstones for the cairn. If you'd seen the 9 Stains video, the cairn curbstones come along and they would go, the arc comes along here as well, in front of the recumbent. So at 9 Stains, it looked like the recumbent had been shoved back, just my opinion, because the inner cairn curbstones met it as it came round the circle. So here's a good example. Like the characteristic of most stone circles, the cairn curbstones come along and there's a good couple of metres between that circumference and the recumbent setting, as it is here. The curbstones are pretty much complete all the way around the circle. Again, not entirely sure if that has been suggested as being recreated or reconstructed, but they are showing a fairly complete curbstone circle. Pretty much can tell that there's a couple of large stones here, but there's a kind of cairn base that I'm walking on, without a doubt, covered in earth and grass, but fairly uneven as I stumble towards the central court. So a bit like Lonehead Davia, although that's a reconstructed cairn, I'm pretty sure I'm standing on top of a cairn base. Now there's stone dikes all over this field complex, so I'm pretty sure that the cairn was being robbed for that purpose. But left in the middle is at least 3 slabs where they're almost built like a little wall, and the idea would be that would be a little wall where the central court, whatever it is that's been put in the central court, would be safe, and with a slab on top of it like a little grave, and then the cairn would be built on top of it with kind of small boulders and rocks, and a small kind of couple of bits more here round to make a reasonably large central court, maybe 3 metres in diameter. So that's a quick walkthrough. It's an unusual site in that it's got the central court, it's got the curbstones for the cairn, it's got quite a lot of, 13 standing stones, these small oddities of the minor stones, and it's odd that it's got this central forecourt that kind of bulges out here beyond the recumbent. So a little bit of a walkthrough, definitely worth a visit. There's only really one gate to climb over, so it depends on your view of accessibility, but it's definitely worth a visit. And just off the main road, literally off the main road between Stonehaven and Aberdeen, up a B road, park, and over a couple of fields and you're in. So I hope you've enjoyed that little walkthrough, and see you again.